Hey everybody, it's Jake from Pro in Winchester, Virginia, and today let's talk about identity. Now, given the current situation, this is probably what a lot of us feel like. Yes, Netflix, I am still watching Tiger King. John Mayer, why are you the only one that understands me? Waiting the world to change. And that can be hard. For a lot of people, myself included, a lot of activities and things that I viewed as defining characteristics of who I am, things that I participated in, things that have become not just activities that we enjoy doing, but things that have become part of who we are, things that we view as critical to our identity as a person. It feels like they've kind of been taken away. We have to put them on hold for now. And it's frustrating. It's weird because it's really what we make it and put into it. You know, you hear those common cliches like, don't let that define you, or don't let this moment define you. But who we are as a person is very much tied up in our perspectives and our interests and the experiences that we have. To have such a big shift like this, from like a global perspective, it's hard, it's frustrating. I personally have been struggling with depression and anxiety for a long time. You know, being somewhat of an extroverted person, it's really hard to live in the same room for over a month. I've seen maybe a couple people, friends that have dropped off groceries. Maybe I'll go on a walk with somebody, maybe like FaceTime, Instagram Live, but it's not the same. That lack of human connection is certainly something that's really been messing with me. Not being able to train in a gym, it's hard. I miss the people that I train with. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the escape and the ability to put frustrations and kind of let that fuel my workouts to some extent. And it's weird when you're stuck at home for 24 hours, where even though you try to make boundaries and you have something where you do work over here, I film videos here, I edit stuff over there, you know, it's just the same. I feel like I need change. I need variables. I miss the routine of going to work or doing something. My identity is very much tied up in the activities and things that I feel define me as a person. And it's interesting because this kind of like existential crisis or whatever this is that I'm having reminds me a lot of an article that I've read somewhat recently by, I think the author's name is Whirl. I don't know if I'm saying that right. This article, and it's really long and really complicated, and I feel like you may not exactly get much out of it from reading it unless you're into like the phenomenology of like pain and being and philosophy and all that jazz. But the interesting thing that this article talks about, the dichotomy between being and like living your life and living in a flow state that's like being fully immersed in your own identity as a person, and then having an injury, having pain, having to stay at home because of quarantine. The thing in this article that really resonates with me is its application to our identity as a person. When we look at things that are potentially traumatic or defining, that it can alter our state of being to some extent. Like normally we exist in this flow state where we experience life and we're able to interact with everything. But then all of a sudden something comes along and it changes that experience for us. No longer are we a whole person. We now have this issue. I have a sprained ankle. I have back pain. I have a shoulder injury. And those things start to mess with who we are as a person. And it begins to change our identity. And we feel like we kind of lose ourselves to some extent. If any of you have ever played a sport or participated in an activity that you're really invested in, and then something comes along and it makes it so that you can't do that, it's a really big change in how we value ourselves, how we identify, what gives us meaning and what gives us purpose. I think these things are obviously very applicable to the rehab or strength and conditioning world, but it also kind of resonates with what we're dealing with right now. We all kind of take things for granted, and we all kind of live in this flow state where we experience, life, and all of a sudden this crazy thing comes along and it changes everything. It makes it so that we struggle with our identity. No longer am I a physical therapist. I'm now just a guy who's at home working on a computer and making videos. A lot of those things that define me as a person, being able to communicate with people, work with people, do rehab, coach people on lifts, I feel like a lot of those things have been taken from me to some extent. And I think this is something that we all resonate with. It's tough. And the hard part is trying to reframe some of this and make it so that it's a positive. We don't all have to go and start a side hustle or a podcast or like a YouTube channel. This is a YouTube channel and I have a podcast. I know that. I don't know. I think the big thing that we need to focus on right now is maintaining a good mindset, rediscover that meaning, that purpose, and find ways to foster that identity that we feel like might be compromised. If there are things that you enjoy doing, you should do them. And don't feel guilty just because we're in the middle of a pandemic. You should still make time for yourself. You should still take care of you. Part of this whole stay safe thing is that your mental health and your psychological well-being are cared for. So even though we may feel like our identity is compromised, it's still really important that we find things that foster who we are as a person. Don't lose yourself just because of the situation. Make sure that you're taking care of you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Guys, please like and subscribe and share and all that stuff. Right now, this is probably the biggest joy and excitement that I have in my life. And so I hope that it puts some smiles on your faces and maybe gives you some stuff to think or talk about.